WOSU's Curious Sea Bus answers your questions about our region, its history, and its people. Today, Ohioans wear the nickname Buckeye with pride. But how did this strange nut become so beloved in the first place? Well, it turns out that the origin story we've been told again and again for generations might just be a tall tale. We asked historian Raymond Irwin to tell us more.
The nickname as applied to human beings comes from an historian, Samuel Prescott Hildreth, who wrote a book in 1852 in which he claimed that the nickname comes from an early settler named Ebenezer Sproat, who was a colonel in the militia and led the procession at the first court in Washington County in September 1788. From there, the story goes that some friendly indigenous peoples were there and shouted the name Hetuck at him, which the white settlers translated at the time as Big Eye of the Buck, because Sproat was 6'4" and well-built. And the idea is that that nickname then became applied to other settlers in Marietta and then applied to people from Ohio from there on. The real story, though, is that Hildreth made up the story. And we know this because Hetuck has no relationship to Buckeye. And as a matter of fact, after some digging in the native languages, I discovered that it probably comes from the Lenape word or Delaware word for Hicktok, which just means tree. And so at a dinner in 1792, the captain of the Delaware peoples, the Lenape peoples, was commenting on Sproat's size. And he said, that guy basically is as big as a tree. And that's probably where it came from. The actual origins of the Buckeye nickname are much more complicated because in the early 19th century, the word Buckeye was an insult. It meant fake or false or shoddy. And it comes from the fact that the Buckeye tree produces wood that is very poor quality, or at least they thought it was poor quality. Eventually, though, the Buckeye becomes kind of rehabilitated in the first 2 decades of the 19th century. And the white settlers discover that Buckeye wood is actually not a bad thing. They start making spoons out of it and plates and things like that. And they discover certain medicinal qualities from the nut, which indigenous peoples had known for a long time, but the white settlers discovered kind of later on. And so the name Buckeye then became applied to humans, we think, in the 18-teens and 1820s, and it meant essentially a person from the West or someone from the frontier. It wasn't initially applied to people from Ohio at all, until we think the late 1820s, early 1830s. And by 1833, Daniel Drake, who was a physician from Cincinnati, uses the term Buckeye to apply to people born in Ohio. In the 1830s, there are several things that imbue certain positive characteristics. For example, one of the gubernatorial candidates, Wilson Shannon, was the first candidate born in Ohio, 1802. He used Buckeye as a campaign nickname. Around the same time, there was the war between Michigan and Ohio over the strip of land that included Toledo. And that was because the canals were projected to go up to Lake Erie. Michigan claimed it. Ohio objected. Governor Lucas sent militia. Michigan sent its own militia. And there was a war. And Governor Lucas used the word Buckeye to be kind of like a battle cry, that the Buckeyes will not be intimidated. And then in 1836, William Henry Harrison used the Buckeye theme for his own presidential candidacy, which is successful 4 years later. And in fact, in 1840, the log cabin campaign, the log cabin is made of Buckeye wood. So you go from an insult in the 18-teens to something of immense pride in the 1830s, a very quick turnaround for the Buckeye.
Do you have a question for Curious Sea Bus? Head over to wosu.org/curious to submit your idea, vote on which question we should investigate next, and see what we've covered so far.